In the past years, I think everybody has heard about veganism or plant-based diet or things like that, right? While before there were just few vegans, veganism has become more and more popular, and there has been an increase in the options available for vegans when you go to the supermarket, to a restaurant, to a bar, or things like that, right? In this video, I'm going to talk about my experience with veganism, which has like a long story in my case, and how I changed my perspective in the past few years. I would say a couple of years or something like that. And yeah, so if you're curious about whether I'm still vegan or not, or you just want to hear about my perspective and how I see things, just keep watching the video after the intro. Welcome back everyone, my name is Annette and I'm here to help people to develop an independent interpretation of reality and trying to understand together how spirituality is integrated in our everyday life. This video is going to talk about veganism and how I became vegan years ago, how I see veganism as a label and how my perspective changed through the years and where I am at now. So let's start with how I became a vegan. So first of all, I wasn't vegan straight away. I had like steps in my life that brought me to make this decision. And I'm talking about 15 and I would say also almost 20 years ago when I started to realize what it means to eat animals, whether I really needed that or not, and things like that. I'm about to be 27 this year, so I was very young when I started to have these questions, right? So I can say in general that I always loved animals when I was a child. I didn't want to hurt animals. I always kind of tried to avoid too much meat and fish. It was just like this feeling that it didn't really appeal me to eat animals. But yeah, I mean, I kept doing that, because my parents were eating meat, and yeah, it was just, not that clear to me when I was a child. I just loved animals. I remember the first big question I made to myself was when I was 8 years old and I was having lunch at school and I realized I had this stick in front of me. I think it was cow. And I was looking at the plate and I was like, this was an animal. Like there, I really made a connection between the fact that what I had in my plate was actually a living animal before. And I don't remember whether I had the stick in the end or not. I really don't remember. But I really felt the pain inside myself that day. So I had that question, and that question led me through changes such as deciding to cut off most of the meat. I was just having like meatballs or like nice dishes that my mom was making, but I wasn't eating meat anymore. And when it comes to fish, I always loved fish, so it was a bit more difficult for me to cut off fish. While at the same time, I didn't really enjoy meat, so for me it was not a big issue. But I really just decreased the assumption of animals. It was just that, I had no clue what it meant to have like a healthy diet or something. So my parents always helped me out in the sense that they tried to let me live the way I wanted to live, but I weren't really educated. So I'm not sure my nutritions were that good at the time. I don't know. I was 12. I finally became vegetarian. At that time, there weren't a lot of options for vegans or vegetarians. Probably just soy milk, or like the first brand we had in Italy was Valsoia that probably was making something. I became vegetarian exclusively for ethical issues because I felt so wrong that I had to eat animals and kill animals to live when I could just leave them out. I could survive, I could eat other stuff, I could live healthy anyway without having to kill animals. And of course, there is also the, the environmental reason and also the health reasons. But at that time, especially internet was not that rich of information, so you could find something, but it was not as now. Then I remember that people were asking me, like few people, because of course it was not known as now, why they were like, why don't you become vegan, or do you still eat all the other stuff? And I really didn't understand why people would become vegans, because I was like, yeah, I mean, an egg doesn't kill a chicken, right? Or if you have milk, it doesn't mean that you're killing a cow. And as I said, there was not a lot of information at that time. I'm talking about probably 2008. I was trying to build up my education on food and what I could eat and things like that. And when I was around 15, I started to search more information, and I just found out, you know, through websites and forums and things like that, YouTube as well, I guess, but it was just the first years. I found out about where milk came from, where eggs came from, and all the industry and how it affects the environment as well, and our health and things like that. So I was like, okay. The thing is, like, when something touches me ethically that much, I don't care if I have to change my life from one opposite to the other. I just want to follow my principles as hard. That as I got my information and as I built my education, and when I say this, I mean, like, I literally binged on information and stuff. Like, I spent my whole days after school, or when I could do that I didn't have to study. I built everything in my head, and I was like, yes, now I'm ready to do that. I remember that period. I was so really, like, I really believed in my principles, and I still do, but I was very extreme as a teenager. And when I believed in something, like, as I said, like, just went all in, and I started to have this extremism, which is not per se a negative thing. I think that when you really believe in your principles, then I think that being extreme in that sense is not a negative thing. It just shows how you really, really, really want to help something in some way. But at the same time, I don't regret that. Like, I am so happy I was that extreme in my teenage years, because then I could just, you know, balance out stuff, but still having those principles inside me, and nothing can just take those away from me. Since then, since I was 15 years old, I've always been a vegan. I just had a change of perspective in the past couple of years, but I'm going to talk about that in the second video, because I am realizing that I need 2 videos to talk about this topic. So this video is going to still address a couple of elements, and then we are going to switch to the second part. What I want to talk about now is giving labels to your choices, right? So when it comes to veganism, when I was younger, I loved labels because it gave me, like, a sense of identity and who I really was. But as I grew, I started to realize that sometimes you different paths, and you can still be, how do you say, like, you could still, like, share deeply the core principles of a label, but then you might have different opinions. Especially, I saw that in veganism, if you would just deviate a bit, then you were not vegan anymore, then you were doing things wrong, and there was so much shame. And I also took part in that shame, not actively writing or commenting, but, like, thinking certain stuff. And I was like, and maybe I still don't agree with those people, I still have my ideas, right? But then my approach changed, and I was like, as I was, like, changing my ideas, I started to understand other people, either their ideas or the fact that they could have, like, different opinions despite sharing the same principles. So I was like, how can we understand veganism, right? Because veganism also affects a lot of areas in your life. So it's not just about food, but it's about, like, clothes and skincare products, and, you know, beauty care products, like products to clean your house. When it comes to veganism, we can talk about veganism. I'm just trying to make a definition right now, as like a philosophical approach to life and ethical principles that lead you to respect animals as much as possible, and trying to eliminate violence against animals and consequently also against our environment, and trying to respect all living beings, right? And this is like what I still believe, but there are some parts that can be a bit blurry, but we will go through that in the second video. But yeah, what I wanted to say is that I identified in that label, but it was causing too much drama, and I'm like, are we here to collaborate or just attack each other? I define myself as a vegan just for the sake of being quick when I'm at a restaurant, so I can just say like, I'm vegan, I'm not eating this or that. But then my definition is broader, and how I see things is a bit broader, but it's just easier, or when I don't know someone being like, oh, I'm vegan. So you kinda understand the type of person that you have in front of you, despite you don't know everything. And to know everything, you need to create, a connection. So when it comes to labels and what I think about them, I think that they have been useful, and for some people are still useful because it helped to delineate certain perspectives of life and certain principles and certain being, but it can be dangerous and it can create harm, in the sense that when they become like your identity, then you need to stay in these strict boxes, and if you go outside, then you're not that anymore. I mean, it's complicated, right? Because are we starting with a label that is broad by definition, or are we starting with a strict definition for a label, and from there, how much are we going to, shame people if they don't follow the rules of being a certain label or stuff like that? So in the end, I do believe that maybe for the sake of a conversation, it's easy to use labels, but then, especially when it comes to people that are close to us, it's better to describe well what we mean by that label, because for sure there will be personal deviations and things like that. Otherwise, we are just, bad copies of a label, but there's always something personal. And when it comes to talking to a public, then would be great if everybody knew that labels don't define a person in its totality. So then if we want to talk about something to a public, we use a label, but they know it's not the whole story. I wanted to address another thing about veganism, and it's part of my story in the sense that the becoming vegetarian overlapped my eating disorder, and I always say that veganism saves me. I'm going to make these parts because first, it might help someone, but also I feel it's very weird. So I'm curious whether someone else might have thought the same way. Maybe it happened to someone else. So basically, I was one of the first vegans, right? So I always felt the weight. And people still do, but especially at that time, believe that if you're vegan, then you're gonna die by malnutrition, you don't eat your nutrients, you lack proteins and things like that, right? The problem is that in that period, I was developing my eating disorder. So of course, I wasn't eating enough. Of course, I wasn't getting enough proteins and everything, but not because I was vegan, it's because I didn't want to eat for other reasons. And I had this conflict between the fact that I had to show the world that if you are vegan, you are still healthy. At the same time, I just wanted to destroy myself. And as I said, it was for ethical reasons, so I was still eating something, and that little I was eating, I didn't want to hurt animals for that. So there was this contradiction where I was so thin, so skinny, and still I wanted to protect other people that maybe were becoming vegans from the discrimination, from like the attack of others that say, oh, you see, you are vegan and you are so skinny because you're vegan and you don't have your nutrients. Of course, probably my project failed in the sense that I was underweight anyway, so probably people that knew I was vegan but maybe didn't know I had an eating disorder thought that veganism was bad for me. And people that didn't know I was vegan probably just saw me and be like, okay, she has an issue probably. But like, I always thought that if I weren't vegan, then I would have probably stopped eating. Because despite I failed in my project, that little that I was still eating for the sake of showing that vegans are healthy saved me from basically dying, right? I was just wanting to make this digression and let me know what you think, because yeah, I try to analyze these things from different angles and I might have my answer, but it's nice to hear other people. I really hope you are enjoying this video and I'm really curious about what you think, because I have observed this phenomenon, or I would say this new consciousness increasing basically since the beginning, because literally I've been hearing about vegetarianism and stuff like that since like almost 20 years. So I really saw like the development and the, you know, like the pros and the cons. Pros because now I can eat almost everywhere. Cons because then it became super trendy. Then of course the fact that something like that became trendy was attacked because, you know, you just do it because you want to follow the trend and not because you really care about that. Then we had people following like certain type of, I don't know, food diets that lacked of nutrients. Of course, it affected the perception that people have of vegans, being like, oh, see, like we were right, we told you that being vegan was bad for you, so now we have, you know, the proof that we were right. I mean, all this mess, I'm not going to detangle this mess now, it's not the goal of the video. If you are interested about that, just let me know, I would really love to talk about that as well. But yeah, just that being said, I'm closing this last digression. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you would like to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so that you won't miss any other video. And yeah, comment below what you think and what you would like to hear more about this topic. And I see you in the next one. Bye!